Okay, well, first I want to thank the previous speakers for the political grounding, and Peyrin, I know you said that you felt like your thoughts were scattered, but I frankly have not heard a more poignant speech in a long time. I feel like you really articulated very well a lot of, what the school is throwing at us and the lengths that they'll go to suppress Palestinian speech. So thank you for sharing your experience. But my name is Jordan, and I keep forgetting. I got these sunglasses from a thrift store, and they're bifocals, so I actually can't read with them on. My name is Jordan, and I'm a third-year UC Berkeley law student, a member of UAW 4811, a member of Law Students for Justice in Palestine, and a member of Students for Socialism. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Students for Socialism, or SFS, and we're a student group open to anyone at UC Berkeley who is interested in creating a United States where the working class holds political power and the economy is planned to meet the needs of people and the planet, including an end to US imperialism and a free Palestine. So today for this teach-in, I'm here to talk to you about the history of the student movement on campus, including previous hunger strikes, and talk a little bit about the contradictions that UC Berkeley relies on to maintain its image as a progressive, air quote, institution, and why it's so important for all of us as students, faculty, and staff to continue to organize. So first, let's touch on student organizing on campus. UC Berkeley has been the site of many important liberation movements led by UC Berkeley students, faculty, and staff. Some of them have been mentioned today, and my parents are teachers, and I know that they would be upset if I did this without asking for class participation. So can I have some people shout out what are some of the different liberation movements that have happened at Berkeley? A lot of them have been mentioned already today, but just shout them out.
Free speech.
Free speech. Anti-apartheid in South Africa. Disability rights. Third World Liberation Front. Any others? That was a lot. That was awesome. Yeah, we have anti-war in Vietnam, but I think that we're just really, it's really powerful to think about how much student organizing has happened before us on all these various topics. And today we're going to focus a little bit on the history of the hunger strikes that have been a part of some of these movements. So the first one I'm going to talk about is in 1999, 6 UC Berkeley students went on hunger strike to protest extreme budget cuts to the ethnic studies budget and elimination of key ethnic studies courses. As I think was mentioned before, in the late 1960s, early 1970s, UC Berkeley was a site of major protests, in fact, to get ethnic studies in the first place. So 30 years later, Berkeley then tries to go back and cut the program that students had fought so hard for, and students were not going to take that lying down. So no different from today, UC Berkeley takes a step forward only a couple years later, decades later, to roll back what students have fought for. And Berkeley lauds itself on its website now for being the first ethnic studies department in the country, but in 1999, 81 people were arrested on the 6th day of a protest and encampment in Barrows Hall fighting for this program. They wanted to cut the budget by over $300,000 and eliminate key ethnic studies courses. And during these protests, 6 students went on a hunger strike, were a part of the mass arrests. But after these protests and after the arrests and the mass response to the arrests, UC agreed to students' demands, which resulted in the creation of the Multicultural Center, the MCC, the Center for Race and Gender, and more faculty hires in the Department of Ethnic Studies. The MCC today faces similar challenges, which has been really critical for organizing on campus, has recently shut down by the UC Berkeley admin without any explanation. Shame. And just goes to show, students have been fighting these fights for so long, and really, when pushed, UC Berkeley has to concede to these demands. But as we see, there needs to be continued pressure from students, faculty, and staff, continued energy around these movements, or UC will, go back on a lot of these promises. So I know that we're really fighting a lot of the same fights. Also in 2010, 22 students went on hunger strike outside of California Hall in protest of Arizona's immigration law, which required a policy to stop and question anyone that they were suspect of being in the country without documentation, known as stop and frisk, kind of colloquially. And as I was reading about this, as I was learning, because I actually didn't know a lot about these hunger strikes before this, I was asked to speak on this and thought this would be a really good opportunity to talk about this history. And as I was looking at this, what did UC say in response to this, this protest about Arizona immigration law? And they were like, what does this have to do with UC Berkeley? which is, I think we've heard that one before in context of Palestine. They're like, we don't have any power over this. What are we supposed to do about it? And that's like always the question coming out of administrators' mouths. But these students held fast and connected the Arizona law to the UC Berkeley campus, demanding that in addition to denouncing the Arizona law, that UC Berkeley declare itself a sanctuary for undocumented immigrants, both students, faculty, staff, and the general public, rehire laid-off janitors. One of the things that students did is really connect this Arizona law to the labor movement, Berkeley's treatment of low-wage workers on UC Berkeley's campus, and as well as drop charges against students who were protesting rising fees on campus, who had been arrested for vandalism. So as you can see, as today, I think a lot of the student demands are really broad and connect a lot of these issues in ways that are really important. So, when the administrators are like, well, what does that have to do with us? It has everything. It has everything to do with us. It has everything to do with the school. It has everything to do with students. I think it's really important to keep articulating these issues and why they connect to UC Berkeley. But these students were hunger striking because they were tired of UC Berkeley seeing students as a source of revenue and not full human beings and treating staff as disposable. And on day 8 of the hunger strike, the UC Chancellor expanded the scope of a task force that was originally only established to review concerns of undocumented students to include in-campus employees. The Chancellor also promised to review the code of conduct and allow student protesters to get community service rather than suspensions for other punishments. And something that's really important to know about these hunger strikes is in addition to the students hunger striking, which is an extreme act of bravery and really shows students' dedication, student, faculty, and staff's dedication to these issues. There was also always people around, hundreds or thousands of students responding to either protests or arrests and really showing their support for these issues. So it's really important that we all keep showing up and really think about how we can mobilize our friends, our community to show up. And so next we'll get into a little bit of what are these contradictions at UC Berkeley and how does student organizing really expose some of the contradictions here? So does anyone know what caused UC Berkeley students to start the free speech movement on campus? Anyone? Over there.
They didn't allow them to table on Sproul.
Yeah, it didn't allow them to table on Sproul, and in addition, there was this thing called loyalty oaths that people had to sign, so that particularly faculty had to sign, which read, I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. I am not a member, nor I do support any organization or that advocates or believes in and teaches the overthrow of the United States government. And I'm not a member of the Communist Party or under any oath to a party or agreement. Really just showing that, they were really, really scared of a movement that was happening, and that, forcing faculty members to sign an oath like this before working at UC Berkeley was really frustrated a lot of people. And it was interesting when I was researching this, a lot of people actually, were very pro-United States that had served in the military and thought it was an affront to them and their service, saying why do I have to sign this to show my commitment? What is this doing? And I think it just really demonstrates that UC Berkeley and the state of California and the government in general was really looking for ways to limit speech and were really scared of what people were saying and what students were saying. So that was one of the big tabling on Sproul and not being going against these loyalty oaths. And in particular, Berkeley now touts this history with this Free Speech Cafe and a whole oral history website. The website itself, the Berkeley website itself says free speech is indispensable to our society and is one of UC Berkeley's most cherished values. It is both a part of our legacy as the home of the free speech movement as well as central to our academic mission. But I think we can all see here today that that just is not happening in actuality. And I think students coming out and really showing the contradictions that UC Berkeley is engaging with when it suspends people like Peyrin, when it doesn't listen to students, to Muslim students, to Arab students, to Palestinian students, when it continues to suppress free speech. And in particular, I'm going to talk about an experience that the law school just had with talk about the law school and the Helen Diller Institute and some of the Zionist entities that are really prevalent in the law school and some of the experiences there. So as I've laid out, UC Berkeley really leans in and relies heavily on its reputation as a progressive institution. And in my time in law school, I've really learned how the hypocrisy of how integrated our universities are to US imperialism and capitalism and how Berkeley plays a role in that. And through our progressivism, they're really critical and irreplaceable, manufacturing consent in the attacks on Palestine, on the working class, both here and abroad. So one of the most striking examples of that is the Helen Diller Institute at the law school. Shame. So before October 7th in 2023, I was really actually largely unfamiliar with the settler colonial nature of Israel and the decades of systemic ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian people. I had a lot of learning to do. And my consciousness was really permanently changed towards being anti-imperialist by seeing the genocide live streamed on my phone and what that was looking like. And then learning about how at the law school, which I came to Berkeley in a lot of ways, I wanted to go to a law school that really prioritized public interest, that prioritized environmental justice. I do environmental law. And to learn, that the school was directly funding and involved and complicit with and deeply tied to the Zionist entity was really shocking to me and really opened my eyes, I think, to how intertwined UC Berkeley is with a lot of these issues. Just this semester, for example, a group at the law school formally hosted speakers who were propagandists for the Zionist state and even someone with direct ties to the IOF. Law Students for Justice in Palestine mobilized around a talk with John Yoo, who you may know is a tenured torture apologist. The talk was titled, "Why Israel Won." Shame! And further, the law school has a Helen Diller Institute, which funds doxing organizations like the Canary Mission, which have had direct impacts on students, on law students I know, for losing jobs. The law school has a direct connection with these organizations and has refused to talk to students, concede to student demands to divest from that, even those things which they have complete control over. I think that there's always a lot of narrative, as I said, about oh, we don't have control over this, but you do. And I think that this relationship really exposes the backwardness of our university, that they really portray themselves and then as progressive, then profit off this reputation in recruitment, and their academics and the way that they talk with their students about why do you want to come to Berkeley? I think that this fact is really key to be exposed and key to agitating our classmates and about the nature of the university. But we can't do that alone. We need to be having these conversations. And I know that everyone here, showing up, especially during reading period, I know that I have many essays that I have to work on. So I know that we are all here and having these conversations, but just really pushing ourselves to bring people in and always be reaching out and making sure that people are aware of these contradictions, that I think until you really look for them or have them forced upon you, I think the genocide in Palestine did for a lot of us, they might not be very obvious, so to keep having these conversations. And so we really have to keep orienting ourselves towards the greatest, most important struggle, a struggle to defeat capitalism and institute a new system where the working people are put in political and economic power. We have a university, we have a government that works for the people and the planet. So I just really would like to articulate again that Peyrin's actions are a part of a long history of activism on this campus, and for UC Berkeley to punish him for political advocacy, which didn't happen, it sounds on your best behavior, is particularly egregious. And I just want to highlight how hypocritical it is. It's our job to continue to call this out, how hypocritical it is for Berkeley to really profit off of this, of its image as progressive and full of free speech and academic freedom when you step out of line, a little bit too far out of line, and they'll suspend you either from your job or from school, institute new policies that make it really, just annoying to be on campus. I tried to basically the law school, LSJP tried to host a protest on campus, and they said no, you can't be there, so they hosted it off campus, in full-time placement. I tried to host a bagel brunch with another organization I'm part of. They also said we couldn't do that because we were in departmental space. I was what are you talking about? Just making life harder for everyone and making students' lives harder, not just for activism, but just making, why is the school not working for us, I think is the question. And really important to be able to continue to talk about that with our peers. The university is supposed to, again, at every opportunity, it's siding with the billionaire class, turning names over to Trump, refusing to condemn or divest from genocide, and failing to protect students, faculty, and staff who make this university run. And finally, I want to articulate that all of us today, our job is to get organized, so when we put out calls for action, we know that we have the masses and organization to respond. And that's how we turn the bravery of one person, of a couple people, into a student movement and show the UC admin that we will not let these contradictions slide, and that we are here, and we won't let stop. We were here and we won't stop. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you all so much.